everyone, and welcome to our YouTube channel, Moneyline with Nancy at TV. In case you're not a subscriber yet, please do subscribe. Just press the subscribe button as well as turn on the notification bell so that you can get notifications when we upload our videos. Don't also forget to subscribe and join, follow, like our other social media platforms. Of course, you're seeing it right about now. Don't also forget to share this video across your platforms. Enjoy the video. All right, welcome back to the program. My guest is Cheta Nwanze. He is a partner at SBM Intelligence. Mr. Nwanze, good morning.
Good morning, Nancy. How are you?
I'm well. Like they say in Nigeria, Happy New Month. That's a new
Happy New Month to
culture
you.
that we've gotten. We're talking about
Well, we need
jollof
to
rice.
forget our sorrows.
So, yeah, exactly. Anything to just forget our sorrows for a minute. We're talking about jollof rice this morning. Why has jollof rice become an economic indicator? why is it now being factored into the economics? Jollof rice economics. That's what we're discussing this morning.
Okay. Thank you for that question. So basically, the SBM Jollof Index is something that we've been doing since 2016. So that's going for 9.5 years now. And the reason we seized on jollof rice as an indicator is that jollof rice is the one meal that is common around Nigeria. You travel, whether you go to Kano, whether you go to Calabar, whether you go to Lagos, you will be able to get jollof rice. And in 2023, we expanded the index to Ghana because jollof rice is a common meal across West Africa. I mean, let's put it this way. It's more difficult to get eba and egusi soup in Kano than it is to get it in Onitsha. Same way, it's easier to get tuwo in Bauchi than it is to get it in Ibadan. So every region of Nigeria has its own traditional meals, but jollof rice is one that is common to all of us. I mean, there may be regional variations in how it is prepared, but it is jollof rice nevertheless, and all of us will be able to recognize that dish wherever we go.
Okay, Director, please can we see the visuals, the graphics? Because such an interesting title you put there, taking a look at presently at the report, the crushing cost of a pot. That's what you titled it, of course, for the second quarter of this year. What does this...
Don't blame me, blame our editor.
The crushing cost of a pot. So, Cheta, this Jollof Index, I've gone through the report, is a cost-based measure, isn't it?
Yes.
But what, yes, people will assume we're talking about food. Of course, we're talking about food Jollof Rice Index. But what deeper structural inefficiencies does it really reveal about our economy? Just like you said, jollof rice is widely eaten, cooked and widely eaten across Nigeria. It doesn't matter how you cook it because jollof rice too gets tired. You have concussion, you know, you may not have all the ingredients.
Please don't take me back to boarding school, I beg.
You know, you have concussion jollof rice. It depends on how you cook it. It will still, so far, if you're a good cook, it will taste nice. For some people, you can put all the orishi inside. You know, all the mede, spice it up, make it beautiful. However, it's...
You forget to put salt. Or you won't put the right amount of curry.
Of curry, you know, and all of that. So, but what structural inefficiencies does it really depict for our country's economy?
So I think that this particular report underscores the fact that Nigeria's high food inflation is not merely a short-term issue, but it's actually a structural crisis. We have deep-seated systemic problems, which, to be honest, are hindering our economic development. One of these problems now is insecurity in farming regions. I mean, I don't think there's anybody who can pretend or deny that we have a major insecurity problem. And I think I want to point out that back in October 2015, we published a report, Terror in the Food Basket, that actually pointed that in the report and a follow-up report that we did in 2017, we used the phrase if these insecurity issues are not challenged, are not taken care of now, and bear in mind 2017 was 8 years ago, that we will get to a stage where the food supply to the other parts of Nigeria will begin to trickle, and that will lead to rising costs. So that insecurity in farming regions is now a major problem. Then we have poor infrastructure. When we were preparing this report, we spoke to a chef who is in Ogun State, and she pointed out that her business suffered during the last year because there was a bridge collapse. And because of that, it brought about a sharp rise in the cost of tomatoes. So these infrastructure problems, and it's something that is pretty much everywhere in the country. And we spoke to people in Bauchi, we spoke to people in Onitsha, who pointed out that just because of, say, maybe rain will fall one day and then they won't be able to get things from point A to point B, it will lead to a sharp shortage and then prices will rise. So infrastructure is a problem, and that infrastructure problem means that our supply chain is fragile. I mean, think about it this way. One of the things that we do not do with Jollof Index is we do not collect data in December. Why is it that we don't collect data in December? Very simple. There's always a price rise in December. Every December prices rise. But when you consider in other parts of the world, in the so-called saner climes, they have holidays such as Thanksgiving, and prices do not rise. Why? Because their supply chains have been fine-tuned. So one of the things that we will need to fine-tune in Nigeria is our supply chains. Essentially, all of these things that I've just talked about are not just microeconomic problems for individual farmers. They are actually macroeconomic barriers to food security and economic growth. Think about it this way. What is Nigeria's storage capacity for food? If we have a major crisis, are we going to start running short of food very quickly? And the answer is yes. So that's something that we need to work on very quickly. We have structural issues, and many of them are actually physical structure that we need to work on. Then, of course, there's the insecurity thing.
Okay, if we take a look at what this crushing cost uh, translates to a typical Nigerian family, I remember in 2016 you said the cost of a pot of jollof rice at that time stood at around 4,087 naira, perhaps around July or
Yes.
so. Yes, if I'm not mistaken. How much does it cost now in Nigeria? And let's also just oppose it with Ghana, because in that report also you said that the Jollof Index in Ghana has also been trending upwards.
Yes, so it's been trending upwards faster in Nigeria. So there are two ways we looked at it. So think of it from the economic reporting viewpoint of rebasing. So when we started like I said earlier, when we started in 2016, we were doing just Nigeria, and over time we expanded. Then in 2023, we added Ghana. So in 2016, when we started, it was about 4,096 naira on average in Nigeria. And now it's 27,500 plus.
To
It's
cook a
just over
pot of
20
jollof.
to cook a pot of jollof for a family of five.
Whoa,
So
okay. Okay,
yeah,
just go ahead. I'll come to my next question because I wanted to ask you, or perhaps you can also put it in your thought trail. 27,000 naira to cook a pot of jollof. What are the ingredients that make that 27,000 naira? Is it
so you
just
have
the
your
minimal concoction, not
no,
looking
it's
nice
not. It's
jollof?
not. It's no,
Okay.
no, no. We're using the standards. We're not. When you are doing an index, you are not doing poverty index. You say standard pot. So you have. So this includes things like your turkey. We don't add plantain.
A
It's
kilo of
just
turkey
the
now is
jollof rice.
10,000 naira, oh, Cheta.
So that which makes my point. So we're not. So basically, when you are doing economic measurement like this, you are not going to be cutting down. We're saying this is what it costs to cook a standard pot, a standard nutritious pot of jollof rice for a family of five. So, and it has risen by 587% since 2016 that we started. If we take it to 2023, when we started measuring with Ghana, it has risen by 153% because as of that January 2023, it was 10,800 naira rough. So now from 10,800 naira rough, it's gone up to 27,500 thereabouts. So the major drivers in Nigeria, number one, we had our currency devaluation. Let's not forget that between that January 2020, 2023 and now, the value of the naira has fallen precipitously. We had the fuel subsidy removal. That's fuel subsidy removal. It's a decision that I think was the right decision from a fiscal point of view, but the manner in which it was implemented was not very good. It was too sudden, and that suddenness created a shock to the system, which we have not yet recovered from. So the fuel subsidy removal added to it. I've talked about insecurity in farming regions, for example, the bandit attacks, and all of these things disrupt supply chains. Basically, when you have supply chains disrupted, you are going to see a sort of, whether it is real scarcity or artificial scarcity, scarcity is scarcity. And when there's a scarcity, prices will go up. So, for example, one of the places that prices rose very sharply was in Bauchi. So these are the things. Now, comparing with Ghana, the price has been rising in Ghana as well, but not as sharply as in Nigeria. So where in Nigeria we have 153% rise since January 2023, in Ghana it's more like a 59% rise since that time. So when we started collecting in Ghana, the average of the index there was 278 Ghana cedi. Now it's 420 Ghana cedi. So in the report, we actually have something that we call the Jollof curve, where we compare the rate of the rise in Ghana and Nigeria. And you can see that the Nigerian curve is kind of sharp. It's a sharp rise, while the Ghanaian curve, while it's rising, is gentler. And I think that the key factors in Ghana include basically the relative strength of the cedi, and the Ghanaian government has actually had better policy interventions at a systemic level than the Nigerian government. So that's one of the things that we have to look at, how our policy interventions can work better.
Can we talk a bit about perhaps the regional food disparities, the unevenness of this Jollof Index across Nigeria? You mentioned, I think you mentioned, was it Bauchi State you mentioned earlier, or one of the states?
Yes.
Can you break down the disparity of, the amount used to cook jollof in perhaps across the regions? Because I see even from your report, there's the North Central Index and all of that.
Yes, the North Central Index. So we collect prices from 13 markets in 8 cities, spread out across Nigeria's 6 geopolitical zones. Bauchi is the worst hit at the moment. It's a 433, and the main driver in Bauchi is pepper. Pepper prices rose precipitously, pepper and onions. And then there was the added thing of there was a mini drought and then banditry in the outlying areas. Kano has seen lower inflation than Bauchi because of its proximity to Niger Republic. And to be frank, Kano has better infrastructure than Bauchi. In Abuja and Lagos, it's basically the whole urban thing that has been amplified prices in both regions. Basically, they are dependent. These two cities are not urban, so which means that there's a larger concentration. And when there's a supply gap, it means that there are more mouths to feed, more pressure on prices, and then of course scarcity. I mean, it's just basic economics. When you have more people putting pressure on something that is increasingly scarce, prices will naturally rise. The South, Port Harcourt, Calabar, the 2 places that we collect, insecurity has aided, but there's that they've had that ability, perhaps because of proximity to the sea. We're not very sure because of the fact that many people who we interviewed could not answer that question. But so while prices have risen in the South generally, it's not been as sharp. So basically, you see these vast microeconomic disparities within Nigeria, and that's those differences means that macroeconomic policies need to be applied at the national level, but we must take a deeper look at the microeconomic impact based on local conditions. In Anambra, we collect data from Onitsha and Oka in Anambra, and both of them, respondents in both cities talked about the fact that the sit at home has had an effect. People have had to rearrange their supply routes around Mondays so that they don't move stuff on Mondays. But it has an effect in terms of the fact that it creates a day that people try to make up for on other days, and this impacts prices as well.
Cheta, let's take a look at the individual drivers of this price increases. Looking at your report, of course, from 2023 to 2025, you said that the key drivers remain rice, onions, pepper, even salt. Yes, because even salt is not even expensive. Those days you used to buy salt for like 50 naira, the small sachet of salt, or even, but now I think that 50 naira goes for 150 or 200 naira or thereabouts. So even tomatoes, vegetable oil. So with these categories of ingredients driving the index upward, what does this signal really about the volatility and the inadequacy of our agricultural value chain investments, vis-a-vis especially that just a few weeks ago the president launched tractors, I think, the use of tractors, yes, across our food belts.
I mean, the first thing that we must look at is insecurity. We can't run away from it. We can import all the tractors that we want, but if farmers can't go to the farms, and again, I will go back to what I talked about earlier, that because this is something that predates this current government and it predates the previous government, the violence in the Middle Belt, it is escalating. I think it's important to point that out, but it's been there for a long time, and it's I must point out that the field work for the Terror in the Food Basket report, we published the Terror in the Food Basket report on October 28, 2015. That report was 2 years in the making. We worked in the field for 2 years on that report. And that the violence was already there. We warned then that this thing will ultimately affect food prices. And here we are. So we cannot run away from the insecurity problem. Now, after the insecurity, a close second is the infrastructure problem. When you have, I mean, I think we've all heard reports from other organizations, not SBM, about tomatoes. When you load tomatoes, that I think it's about 50 to 60% of the tomatoes that come from the north to Lagos arrive here in Lagos and arrive already rotted, because we don't have enough refrigerated trucks, we don't have storage facilities, and then our roads are in such a state that it takes a journey that probably could take half a day ends up taking like 4 days. So these are things that we need to fix, because ultimately they translate. You can't be having wastage like that and expecting that prices will remain affordable. Then of course there are those fiscal things, the fuel subsidy removal, the currency devaluation. People talked about, shortly after this report came out, a government official reminded me that after all the government imported a lot of rice earlier in the year, and I said yes, that you did, but there was currency volatility at the time. There was a point where you couldn't make a decision as to when to change currency, when to change money, because you would change today. It is 1,600 to the dollar. Tomorrow is 1,400. Next tomorrow it's 1,500. So that volatility essentially evened out what they were trying to do.
Okay, Cheta, sorry to come in here. A bag of rice now has reduced. At least the bag of rice, it depends on which brand you're getting. Let me say averagely about 65. Let me say between 63 to 70,000. Let me just say, put it that way, averagely.
But note, but note that as of the time that we started collecting this index, a bag of rice was about 10,000 naira.
Yeah, it was about 10,000 in 2016.
Yes. 2016.
Because I know that when President Jonathan was president, a bag of rice then was about 7,000, 8,000 naira. And
but Jonathan left in 2015. He left at the start of 2015. So we started collecting this index Q1 20, which is essentially
2016.
March, Q1 2016.
Yeah, and
As of
then a
that time,
bag
it
of rice 10,000 naira.
was roughly 10,000, yes.
10,000 naira.
So if it was 10,000 then, and now it's about 63,000, that's a significant
With
increase.
different fluctuations, of course, over the years,
With
because even
different
a bag of
fluctuations
rice
over the years.
got to 150,000 naira at a time.
At a
I think
point,
in the
yes.
heat of the cost of living crisis, 2023, 2024.
Between 2022 and 2023, thereabouts.
Yes, about
As
that.
a result of the border closure. So again, these are good examples of how macroeconomic policies end up having a microeconomic effect.
And not just even having micro, because if we're talking about having micro, we're sounding so esoteric. Macroeconomic policies now have an effect on our kitchen tables. So I'll be calling this kitchen table economics this morning, because sometimes, because sometimes we are so lost in some of this economic jargon, and we may not, or people may not even understand what we're saying. What we're saying right now is that the cost of living crisis is still there. Cost of living is still high. Jollof Rice Index, we're talking about Nigerian living standards. Now, let me move over to the question around what we're discussing, of course, this morning is poverty of the plate. How do you equate the cost of jollof rice, cooking a pot of jollof rice now, to, minimum wage? Because if you're saying 27,000 naira to cook a standard pot of jollof rice, how much is minimum wage in Nigeria now? About 70,000 naira. So it will cook you like 3 pots of rice, would it?
Yes,
about that, or
2.5
times, or 2.6 times.
Well, the bottom line is that just a single pot of rice, which is essentially a single meal, or if you stretch it 2 meals, is 40% of monthly wage for the lowest earners in society. What that simply means in simple English is that the lowest earners in society, in Nigerian society, cannot afford to feed themselves. That's the long and short. And I think I want to relate it with 2 reports that we did. The first report in 2019, I think, no, 2018, and then a follow-up report to that in 2022 about the follow-up report, sorry, was in 2023 about the proportion of income that Nigerians use to eat. Basically, the vast majority of Nigerians now use the vast majority of their income just for food. If I'm to put it in numbers, as of 2018, Nigerians were using 63% of their income just on food. As of 2023, we're using, give or take, about 90%, almost 90% of our income just to eat. That is what that means is that we don't have disposable income which can be used for other things. Essentially, Nigerian spending power has taken a severe beating. Yeah, that's the long and short.
How seriously should policymakers and perhaps economists alike take this jollof rice thermometer statistics, as it were? Yes, and you mentioned a government official earlier on. Should we begin to perhaps take this index as a proxy for consumer distress? That's one question. And let me also add, let me also add this. In macroeconomic terms, do you think that indices like this will help us understand inflation beyond perhaps the standard consumer price index from the NBS?
That is precisely what the index was developed for. Basically, most Nigerians do not understand when the NBS publishes figures, and I must say that the NBS generally does a very good job, and it's very important to have regular updates of data so that Nigerians will understand just where the economy is going. But it's also important to point out that most Nigerians, we must admit, one of our weaknesses, are not very numerate. So the storytelling is very, very important, and this is what implements like the Jollof Index are meant to do. Tell the story in a way that people will get it. Basically, food is a problem. And to the question about policymakers, I'll take it very, very seriously. My recommendation is not to be antagonistic to reports like this. but to see them as a very good thermometer to understand what is happening. One of the things that we've historically had a problem, and it's been a problem in Nigeria, regardless of whether it has been civilian or military governments, is we seem to be adverse to what we term as bad news. This is just telling you this is what is happening.
Okay.
So because it's happening, take a look at it and then act accordingly. It's just that simple.
Cheta, do you think that informal market behaviors that we've seen in the past, I think was it also last year, somewhere in Niger State, the governor, I think, moved against hoarders, for example. In you collating this report over the years, do you think that those kind of informal market behaviors like arbitrage, hoarding, speculation, also add to the price of jollof rice or cooking a pot of jollof rice, making it higher in terms of the cost build-up essentials? You talked about tomatoes earlier on, and especially tomatoes and even some other perishable items.
I would say no.
Or even rice.
I would say that kind of behavior is a result, is a reaction to market conditions. One thing that we must learn to understand in this country is that people react to incentives, and this is true anywhere. If I want to start going all academic, I can give you examples from say the USSR in 1935, when government officials began to seize the produce. People began to hoard. So think about it. A lot of the hoarding that's happened in Nigeria in the past, over the past 8 years, more or less, was a reaction to the policies of the Buhari government. I think we can't avoid that. People began to hoard when stories began to make the rounds of government officials or the military, and whether those were rumors or not is irrelevant. What is relevant is the fact that people heard that, oh, it is possible that somebody will come and seize your goods and sell for free, or lock up your warehouse or claim that you were hoarding and then sell. The incident, if you remember, back in 2021 or 22, where Samad in Abuja, Sahad stores in Abuja, was sealed up on accusations of hoarding. That was very damaging, because when things like that happen, other shops will hear and will react as a result. So one of the things that we need to learn how to do is to let the markets dictate. Of course, the markets should not be left.
Sometimes the market can be greedy too.
Yes, that's what I was saying. I say that the market should not be left completely unshackled.
Yeah.
Market interventions, market interventions or attempts to restrain the market should be completely rational and predictable.
Okay.
When you have uncertainty, there will be instability.
Cheta, 1 minute. If we take a look at the interventions by the central bank at attempts of monetary tightening, targeted perhaps at food inflation, do you think that is having an effect, especially with this new central bank regime? Then what's your outlook moving forward? What do you guys foresee at SBM Intelligence in terms of forward-looking perspectives on Jollof Rice Index?
Well, I think number one, inflation is still very high. So the central bank, I can't say the government, because the central bank is at least is nominally independent of the government. Interest rates will remain high in order to curb inflation. It's basically the Paul Volcker book. So that's what we'll have to do. So essentially, what it means is a lot of pain is still to come. The real question is whether we have the fortitude to bear that pain. The CBN has no choice, or doesn't have much choice, but to leave monetary policy rates above inflation. So it goes back to things within the that should be nominally within the government's control: insecurity, infrastructure. If we sort those and inflation begins to calm down, then the central bank will begin to bring down interest rates. It's a natural reaction.
So will jollof rice come down or not? The cost of a pot, your outlook, or will it continue to go up from 27,000 plus?
It will continue to go up in the short to medium term. What I cannot say is the rates of going up, because again, this is something that we must understand. Inflation is a constant. Things will always go up. It's the rate
It's
of
the rate.
inflation that is the problem, not inflation itself.
Just in 10 seconds, do you think that what the government announced yesterday, the National Economic Council, in terms of empowering economic stimulus across the 8,809 electoral wards in the country, would bring some kind of, solace, and that could impact if it goes on?
The only answer to that question is
that.
wait and see.
Okay, wait and see. So let's wait and
Yes.
see. Thank you very much, Cheta.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, that's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. We've been talking about Jollof Rice Index as released by SBM Intelligence. I've been speaking with a partner at SBM Intelligence, Cheta Nwanze. Thank you for making it up to this minute watching the video. Thank you all. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Moneyline with Nancy TV. Like, follow all our other social media platforms where we keep you up to speed with fantastic interviews, as well as markets, personal finance, business, and economy information. This is the best place to be. I'll see you all again in the next video.